3 true scary stories for sleeping. Story 1. I used to love camping alone. No distractions, no noise, no people. Just me, the trees, and whatever I could carry on my back. That changed 3 years ago during a weekend trip to Stone Pine River, a quiet stretch of forest near the base of the Cascades. I'd been there a couple times before. There was this one spot I liked to set up camp near a bend in the river where the water slowed down and got quiet. Good for fishing, great for sleeping. That weekend, the weather was perfect. Clear skies, cool breeze. I hiked out late Friday and set up just before sundown. That night started out peaceful. I had a little fire going, cooked a pack of ramen, and leaned back against the tree with my boots off. The only sounds were the crackling fire, the low rush of the river, and the occasional splash from something breaking the surface. Probably fish. Or so I thought. Around 1 a.m. I woke up. Not from a sound, from a feeling. Like I wasn't alone. I sat up in my tent and just listened. The fire was mostly out, just the embers glowing. The river sounded louder now, more erratic, like something was moving through it, slowly, deliberately. I peeked out of the tent, half expecting to see a deer getting a midnight drink. What I saw instead was a shape, kneeling in the shallow part of the river, facing away from me, pale, hunched, and completely still. The moonlight hit its back, and I could see that it was too thin. Not like skin and bones thin, like stretched. Like something was wearing a person's suit wrong. I held my breath. It didn't move. Just stayed there, knees in the water, arms hanging limp, head down. It wasn't drinking. It wasn't doing anything. Just kneeling in the riverbed, facing upstream, completely silent. I don't know how long I watched it. Could have been 2 minutes, could have been 20. But at some point, I backed slowly into the tent, zipped it shut, and didn't sleep. At sunrise, the river was calm again. Nothing out of place. I checked the spot. No footprints. No sign anything had been there at all. I told myself it was a dream. Maybe a weird shadow or a trick of the moonlight. I stayed another night anyway. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself I wasn't scared. That was a mistake. The second night, I made sure to stoke the fire high. I even laid a couple sticks across the riverbed near camp to see if they'd move or break. I stayed up late, dozing off and waking every hour or so. Around 3 a.m., I opened my eyes to see. Nothing but firelight. Everything was still. Until I looked at the river. The sticks were gone. And something was standing in their place. Not kneeling. Standing. The same shape. Pale. Thin. Taller than before. Its arms hung low, like the bones weren't in the right places. It just stood in the water, facing my camp this time. I couldn't see a face, but I could feel it looking at me, like it had been waiting, like it knew I saw it the night before and had come closer. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I just watched. And then it took a step toward the bank. That was enough. I didn't care about the tent. I didn't care about the gear. I grabbed my flashlight and bolted up the trail, half blind and in the dark. It didn't stop until I hit the gravel service road, about 1.5 miles up. I camped in my car the rest of the night. The next morning, I hiked back down in daylight. My tent was untouched. My gear was right where I left it, except for the fire pit. The ash had been rearranged into a symbol, a spiral made from burnt wood and stones. Not random and not natural. I never reported it. Who would I report it to? Some humanoid thing stared at me from a river? No one's gonna believe that. But I know what I saw. And sometimes, when I hear water moving outside my window after it rains, I get that same feeling in my chest. The one that says, don't look outside. Story 2. I don't even know where to start with this one. Maybe the truth is, I shouldn't be the one telling it. But my buddy Chris, well, he's not around to tell it himself anymore. This happened back in 2020, October, just before the leaves had fully turned. Chris and I had been friends since middle school, camping buddies for years. Same rhythm every trip, pack light, go deep, no phones, no distractions. We used to call it our mental reset button. But that last trip, I think we hit a button we weren't supposed to. We were up in the Adirondacks, not at a campsite, not even a known trail. Chris had heard about this hidden route from a guy at the gear shop, a barely marked side path that led to a secluded lake deep in the backcountry. No crowds, no noise, and no rangers. Of course we were in. It took most of the first day to hike in. Thick woods, no signal. The trail started strong but got messier the deeper we went. Roots, deadfall, old growth. The kind of place that doesn't feel quiet. It feels watched. But we chalked that up to our city nerves. We found the lake by dusk. Beautiful. Still. The kind of place you feel lucky to see with your own eyes. We set up camp on a flat patch between two hills. Fire going, ramen boiling, stars coming out in droves. Chris said something I still think about. He looked at the lake and said, "Places like this feel like they've been waiting for you." I just laughed. What? Like it missed us? He smiled but didn't say anything. That night, we sat up by the fire and talked about everything. Life, women, regrets. Then we crashed around midnight. It was cold. I kept waking up, not from noise, but from the absence of it. No bugs, no owls. Just that kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Then I heard footsteps. Slow. Crunching leaves. Coming from the direction of the lake. I whispered, "Chris." Nothing. I unzipped my tent and peeked out. I couldn't see anything. The fire was just embers. But the footsteps had stopped. I stared into the dark for what felt like 10 minutes. Then, from the trees, I heard a whisper. "Come down to the water." I didn't move. I didn't answer. Eventually, I zipped back up and sat there, knife in hand, heart thudding like a drum. In the morning, Chris looked like hell. Pale, bloodshot eyes. I asked if he slept. He just said, "You didn't hear anything last night?" I lied and said no. I didn't want to spook him or myself. We decided to hike around the lake that day, see if we could find any good fishing spots. The opposite side was rougher terrain, thick brush, more shadows, a lot colder. We kept getting this weird sensation that we were walking in circles, but we were using a compass, and the lake was always behind us. At one point, we found a small clearing. Looked like someone had built a lean too long ago, now collapsed and rotting. In the middle was a pile of stones, carved with symbols. Chris squatted down, ran his fingers over one of them, and muttered, "This isn't natural." I joked, "What? You think this is a druid ritual site or something?" But he didn't laugh. He just said, "I've seen this symbol before, on a tree, last night." That night, the fire didn't help. The cold felt personal, like it was coming from inside the forest itself. Chris didn't eat, just stared into the flames like he was expecting them to say something. I tried to lighten the mood, but he cut me off. "You ever feel like something followed you back to camp?" I said no, even though I had been feeling it too. We stayed up late. Around 2 a.m., Chris stood up and said, "I have to go to the lake." I grabbed his arm. "No, man, sit down. It's freezing out there." He looked at me with his weird smile and said, "She's waiting for me." I don't know what possessed me, but I followed him. Down the hill, through the brush. The lake looked black in the moonlight. Chris walked straight into the edge, shoes crunching over the frost-bitten leaves. He stared across the water and said, "Do you see her?" I looked. Nothing but ripples, fog rising, but then I did see something. Just under the surface, a face. Pale, eyes wide open, drifting just beneath the ripples. And then another beside it. And another. At least 6 floating there, watching us. Chris took a step forward. I shouted and grabbed him, yanked him back just in time. He fought me, like he wasn't in control anymore. "Let go. I need to see her." I dragged him uphill, swearing, stumbling. He screamed the whole time, not in fear, but in grief. When we got back to camp, he collapsed and passed out cold. Didn't even get in the tent. I threw a blanket over him and sat by the fire the rest of the night, blade in my hand, staring into the dark. In the morning, he was gone. Not just his body, his gear, his footprints, everything. Like he'd never been there. I searched all day, called out till my throat hurt, nothing. I hiked back to civilization, reported it. They sent out a search party, found my camp. No signs of struggle. They said maybe he got turned around. Happens more than you'd think. That was 2 years ago. No trace, no body, no gear ever found. But last month I went back. Not to the lake, just to the gear shop where Chris had first heard about it. I talked to the guy behind the counter, a new face, younger guy. Told him the story. Asked if anyone else had gone out to that same lake since. He just looked at me funny and said, "That trail's not real, man. Not on any of our maps. Never has been." I checked when I got home. Every GPS record, every satellite map I could find. That lake doesn't exist. But I remember it. I remember the water. I remember her face in the ripples. And most of all, I remember what Chris said right before he vanished. She's waiting for me. Story 3. I've only told this story twice. Once to a therapist, and once to a stranger I met at a bar, who bought me a drink just to hear it. Both of them had the same reaction. They believed me. And that scared them more than if they hadn't. This happened about 4 years ago. I was in a bad place mentally. Divorce, job loss, drinking too much. So when my cousin Ryan invited me on a week-long hike to reconnect with nature, I said yes without thinking. I didn't even ask where we were going until we were already halfway upstate. He called it Dry Lake Wilderness, some abandoned tract of land a few hours from the Adirondacks. Not technically off limits, but not maintained. No official trails, supposedly a hidden gem for people who wanted to go truly off-grid. It wasn't on Google Maps. Ryan had found it on a paper topo map his dad left him. That should have been a red flag number 1. We parked on the side of a dirt road and hiked 3 hours through unmarked woods. Ryan was confident. Too confident. We passed fallen towers of trees, strange animal paths, and once, what looked like a man-made stone circle, maybe 8 feet across. He didn't even slow down. Said stuff like, the old logging crews used to mark water sources like that. But it didn't feel like it marked water. It felt like it was keeping something in. Eventually, we reached a small lake. More like a wide, shallow pond, mostly dried up, with cracked mud along the edge and only a few patches of stagnant water. Hence the name. On the far side, right near the tree line, was a cabin. Wooden, weathered, roof sagging, but somehow still standing. Perfect, Ryan said. We'll camp in there. I hesitated. You sure that's safe? It could collapse. He laughed. Man, it's been standing for 50 years. You think it's gonna pick tonight to give up? Inside, the cabin was better than expected. Musty, but dry. A stone fireplace, 2 bunks with moldy mattresses, dust so thick you could write your name on it, and in the corner, an old wood-burning stove with rusted pots stacked inside it. We aired the place out, cleaned what we could, and made a fire outside before nightfall. That night, we cooked, joked, and for the first time in months, I actually felt okay. Until the sun went down. The first weird thing was the silence. No frogs, no birds, just the fire. Even the wind seemed to die. I pointed it out, and Ryan shrugged. High elevation. They go out quiet sometimes. But I'd been in the woods before. This wasn't quiet. This was hollow. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. Like someone dragging their fingers across the outside walls of the cabin. Slow. Steady. Long strokes, like they were circling the entire thing. I held my breath and listened. Ryan was asleep, mouth open, snoring faintly. The sound stopped near the back wall, and then I heard soft knock. Not on the door, on the window. Just one tap. Delicate. Like whatever was out there didn't want to break it, just see if someone would open it. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Just watched that window until the sky turned gray. In the morning, I checked outside. No tracks, no signs of wildlife, just the same cracked mud, same still water. Ryan was chipper as ever, eating oatmeal like nothing happened. I asked if he heard anything. He said no, but the way he said it, it felt like a lie. Day 2, we hiked a bit, gathered dry wood, saw no other people. It was like we were in our own little dead zone. That night, it got worse. We sat by the fire for hours. Around midnight, the flames suddenly dimmed, like a wind came through, but I didn't feel one. Ryan looked over at me and said, "You hear that?" I shook my head. "Exactly," he said. The force just stopped. I went inside early. I couldn't shake the feeling something was watching us from across the dry lake bed. At 3:17 a.m., I remember the exact time. I heard scraping again. This time, inside the cabin, underneath the floorboards, like long nails dragging through dirt. I shook Ryan awake, whispering, "Do you hear that?" He listened and nodded. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Don't answer it if it knocks again." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" He turned away and pulled the blanket over his head like a kid hiding from a nightmare. We didn't sleep. We just waited. But no knock came that night. The next day, we packed to leave. Ryan said he didn't want to push our luck. I was more than ready. But as we hiked out, the woods looked different. Like the trail behind us was folding in. I swear the trees were closer together than they were before, and darker. 3 hours later, we were right back at the lake. "No way," I said. "We've been going in a straight line." Ryan didn't speak. He just looked at the cabin. That night, we stayed inside. No fire, no lights, just silence. Around 1 a.m., it started again, scratching under the floorboards. Then the knock. Tap, tap, tap. But this time, it was at the back door, one we hadn't noticed before. The hinges were rusted shut, but there was a door, and something behind it. Tap, tap. "Let me in," a voice whispered. Not outside, from inside the walls. Ryan began muttering something under his breath, like a prayer, like he'd done this before. I asked him again what the hell was going on. He finally said, "My dad came here once, when he was young. Said something lives under the lake, or used to. When the water dried, it stayed behind." "Stayed where?" He didn't answer. At dawn, the door was gone, literally. No hinges, no seam, just blank wall. We left everything behind and ran. This time, the trail opened up for us. like it was done with us. When we reached the car, I looked back. The woods looked normal again. Too normal. Ryan wouldn't talk the whole ride back. A week later, he moved to Arizona. Told me never to contact him again. And I haven't. Every now and then, though, I dream of that knock. Not at the door. At my window. Tap. Tap. And a voice that says, I found you again.